with any country in the world, India, China, Greece, Spain, whatever country, it's nice that that population remains its native population in terms of its original peoples. So, for example, Australia, if Australia's 80% Anglo-Saxon, that would be cool, because that's kind of what I see Australia as, an identity around that. And if that allows me space and that 20% to come in and be a good immigrant and do good things,
I think this is where you and I depart a little bit, isn't it? Because I think for me, I think that what makes you an Australian is to be here, commit to this country, to one flag, and to commit to the Christian values that it was based upon, and that built these institutions of the West.
Yeah.
Because I think you watched the Sam Bamford podcast where James and I got into a bit of a biff with him around some of these concepts, and I think we're all on a journey in trying to work out where we think. But I feel like one of the points we made is just being Anglo-Saxon.
I think being Anglo-Saxon
isn't enough. It's not, to me, that...
Well, I think for that flag, that is the Commonwealth flag, and for me, the Commonwealth is the Anglo-Saxons, the Anglo-Celtics.
But the Prince Charles, who's the leader, King Charles, who's the leader of the Commonwealth now, says that he's the leader of a multi-faith nation, and he's wearing the...
Well, that's what I mean. That's the issue. So
it is. So, but you're saying that for Australia, for someone to be Australia, you're saying that Australia should be majority Anglo-Saxon. Well, I would rather have 0 King Charleses and 100 immigrants that assimilated into our culture and values and built the country well.
It's hard with the King Charles situation, because you've got to remember King Charles that's Charles III, right? So after Charles I in the 15th century was executed, I don't think there has been a really true King of England anymore that represents Christendom. And in Charles I's execution, he did say that England, the Commonwealth, should always be ruled by Christian leaders. So I would make an argument, historically speaking, that no King of England since the 15th century has truly been a Christian king. And that it was quite clear after his execution, especially in 1560, when they established the Central Bank of England. England fundamentally changed from a Christian nation to a finance nation, a banking nation, a nation of money, not Christendom. So, its priorities changed.
Yeah.
So for me, trying to protect and preserve Christian, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Catholic nations is really important, because we're going to lose. There's going to be none left soon.
But I guess for me, you've used 3 words there. So Christian, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
3 descriptors. I think for me, the only one that really speaks to the foundations of this country is that they were built on Christian foundations, because it so happened that with the wider Australia policy, you kept out parts of the world that were built on other religious foundations. You tended to pull from Christian countries, and so then it coalesced with people from Anglo-Celtic backgrounds.
Yeah.
But what really was formative to the institutions that we built, like notions of freedom of conscience, speech, religion, belief, association, and then ultimately democratic foundations, they're coming from a Christian idea.
Yep.
Islam doesn't have it. And I think for me, the most significant thing Pauline Hanson is doing is saying that we need to restrict immigration from Islamic majority countries. I was in a...
Yeah, the no-fly zone areas, like no-go zones.
Yeah. I think at a very basic level, that is something we need to do, but we're not even able to have the conversation yet.
Why are these areas... Like, we've got to remember that the reality is there are differences, not just in culture, but racial differences. There's IQ differences in many countries as well, and that goes down to environmental factors, but also genetical factors. So, like, for example, you and I share, like, 99% of our DNA or 50% of our DNA with a banana, but a small percent change in DNA has a huge impact on anything. So, getting a bunch of people, for example, that are maybe not as high IQ because they haven't had the time to be highly educated or be in the right environmental circumstances to change the way that they are in the future, has impact. So it's like me getting a Chihuahua, for example, and expecting it to be a sheepdog. Like, it sounds nice in theory, and that's what the left want to do. They want to treat everyone equal so that anyone can just do the job of a sheepdog, but in reality, a Chihuahua, after a year or two of doing that work, will have a broken back, will be mentally destroyed, and will not be able to keep up with the sheepdogs.
I think my position is that all human beings have equal dignity and worth. We would agree on that.
Yeah, yes. So spiritually, all humans are divinely equal.
It's one of the reasons I fight so hard for the right to life to be respected, is because I think that no matter how small.
But you're fighting for its spirit, divine.
No matter how disabled you are, no matter like what attributes you
Yeah.
have, you deserve to be able to live. No one has the right to kill you.
That's because you have a soul, right?
One of the reasons I have a problem with Islam is because as it's called a religion, but I think I would put it more in terms of political ideology, is that at its core, it seeks to take over.
Well, yeah,
And-
they see the world in two spheres,
Yeah.
the world of peace and the world of war,
Yeah,
for sure. So
and
there's-
in Muhammad's later life, all of those like sort of peaceful epithets in the Quran are then superseded by his later period where there's a much greater call to violence and his own example of political assassinations, you know, in order for him to have power. That's not in the person an example of Jesus Christ, because people will say, oh, you can pick and choose really terrible verses in the Bible too, but if you read the Bible as a whole and the Ten Commandments and then the New Testament and how Jesus summarizes it into the singular most important commandment to love thy neighbor as thyself,
Yeah.
That's not in Islam. Islam is a call to violence. There's in the life of Muhammad, who's the perfect person, sex slaves, adultery.
Well, Muhammad
murder.
himself was a leader who
Yeah.
had finance and he had a standing army and he ruled militarily and he ruled as a king essentially. The Muslims will say he didn't, but he did. Where Christ, the difference is he was a spiritual leader, and he was a metaphysical leader. He altered humanity consciously through the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. So he didn't command an army, he didn't command finances necessarily. He had his disciples, he taught a message and altered the human spirit through his message, and then through his sacrifice fundamentally, ontologically and spiritually changed human nature forever. Because before Christ, there was no such thing as equality in terms of the spirit. So it was told that, say, for example, you come from a certain family or a certain group of people, that your spirit was lesser. So your soul was lesser than another soul. So, for example, kings, at the time there was Augustus Caesar, he was the emperor of Rome. He was considered a divine god amongst men. So his spirit was God, according to the Romans. So when Christ came, he was essentially the greatest politician ever lived. He said, no, Augustus Caesar, you're not the son, you're not the God. I am the Son of God, but we are all equal under the spirit of my message through the Holy Trinity. So everyone under humanity's existence was essentially a part of God in a lowercase g sense. So that was the first time in human history a prophet, which the Islamic people call him, or the Jews will call him a false prophet, whatever they refer to him. It was the first time in human history as someone said, no, everyone's soul is divinely equal. That was never thought of before. That wasn't even like a concept. No one thought of that. The Greeks and the Romans didn't think that. The Greeks and Romans believed they had, their pagan gods, Zeus and stuff, who were far superior, far more divine. But no other, in human history, was there a leader who said, no, we're all divinely equal. But in that teaching, where it gets skewed, Christians have gone, well, they've misconstrued that message where just because your soul is divinely equal doesn't mean you're materially divinely equal. So the idea is that this material world has flaws and it's full of sin. You've got the original sin, passions, lust, gluttony, murder, killing, abortion. All these things are material bad things. So the reason why, someone as a Christian is so passionate about saving a child before, like through abortion, you want to save a child. Yeah, that child might have disabilities and stuff, but their soul is still divinely equal. Obviously, the child is materially not equal. Like, if you're born with one less arm, you have an inequality there. Like, you have one less arm. So you're not going to be as competent as someone who has two arms. So that's where the translation's been lost. Christians have been, brainwashed into believing we must ignore the material world and pretend it doesn't exist. That's a very left-leaning concept. That's, the most woke side of things. And the left, that's what they want. The left want to live in this reality where the material world doesn't matter anymore. But the material world does matter. Genders matter. Borders matter. Your country matters, race matters, culture matters, mathematics matter, all these things matter. And unfortunately the left and some Christian dominations want to pretend that the material world is not important. That doesn't take away from your divine soul being equal. Of course it is. Everyone is divinely equal. Even the most evil people in this world, the hardest sinners, they still have a soul. God will judge them and what their actions they did in the material world and their voice inside their own spirit. But there are differences in this world. And that's why when you see South Africa as a great example, South Africa was a country that was, colonized by Anglo-Saxons and Anglo-Celtics. They went in there and fundamentally transformed South Africa forever. They gave them electricity, water, hospitals, created a great society. Then after the change of government, essentially what happened was the borders were left completely open. And in the space of a few months, millions of people stormed into Africa from all parts of Africa. And now Africa is a shithole, like essentially just a shithole. They're lawless, there's murders. You can't even live there without having electric fence.
I've got some good friends who are South African and they've moved here and they talk about the fact that they moved for their children because you just couldn't be safe. You couldn't get from A to B without the potential of being murdered, your car being hijacked, and then
every time
your kids being taken, and then you having to pay huge amounts of money to get your kids back.
Not just white people being killed, but black people as well. So
no, it's a failed state. It feels like South Africa has become.
Well, just get this right. By 2055, they're saying in South Africa there'll only be 2% white, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic peoples. That's dramatic.
I mean, I think we would agree that you need to have a strong border, and when I think maybe one of the problems for Christians is that they've been sort of beaten down into this idea that they've got to be nice and silent, and that if they are to raise concerns or to say things like we can't let everybody in, or there are two genders, they get afraid of being called racist and bigoted and transphobic.
Yeah, we should not be afraid.
Or the same-sex marriage debate, to say that marriage is between a man and a woman and that is the optimal arrangement to raise children in.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be legalising arrangements that will then lead to children being raised in homes where there isn't a mother. That can happen by accident, but to make that an acceptable legal framework to set that up when it's not in the best interest of children, I think Christians have felt afraid of saying that because then they'll be called homophobic. So
well, you're right though, because just to add to what you said, like conservatives have this weird phenomena where they want to be liked by the left. It's like this weird inbuilt thing by conservatives, like we have to be liked by the left. You and I don't have
that problem.
We don't, I don't care. But the left, the left are different. The left don't care if the right like them.
No.
The left are ruthless.
That's one of the reasons why the right has been losing. Is because, and that's why people like Trump, Farage, Lowe, Hanson are cutting through, because they don't care about being liked by the left. But
they still do a little bit.
But
not as much as I like.
But comparably, they are freewheeling, loose-spirited agents.
Yeah, they're shameless.
Yeah,
which comes with shameless man.
Yeah, so they probably don't have the same. I feel like I've got so much freedom as a podcaster to say what I want to say, and as a public advocate, I obviously have some constraints because of my employment. I feel that there's a lot of people who would like to get me sacked, and so who activists who do whatever they can, they just seem to work on it constantly. And so they try to constrain my free speech and my academic freedom. So far I've survived, but that's definitely a challenge. But I guess I think that even just this week, how Barnaby Joyce said we're the gayest party around, but then Pauline Hanson comes out and says, I like gay people, but I don't like the Mardi Gras. You couldn't imagine that whole exchange coming out of the Liberal Party. They just would never be able to say anything as authentic as that.
No, look, One Nation's definitely a step up, but in regards to like if we want to actually fundamentally save Australia and not it become South Africa or Rhodesia, we're far from it. Like the right need to stop caring about what the left think. And just like we're passionate about abortion or gender, like recognizing two genders, and of course there's like some anomalies, but that doesn't, we're talking about macro humanity here. That's my argument. My argument is we are divinely equal by soul. Of course we are. We're all built in the image of God. Our souls are. But materially, there are differences. There are material things in this universe that we need to acknowledge. And for far too long, Christians and conservatives have tried to do this whole liberalism thing, like, oh, we can't acknowledge that some races have different IQ levels. We can't acknowledge that some races, have different tendencies. We can't acknowledge the stereotypes. Like we can't even the stereotypes that Asians are bad drivers or like this. Like you say that out loud. It's like, oh my God, you've just committed a crime. It's like, no, the stereotypes exist for a reason. Like this, where there's smoke, there's fire. The stereotypes exist for a reason. We can't acknowledge differences in culture. I also think we just should take it a bit lightly, loosely. Like who cares if someone? I think we're so afraid of offending people that's become. Well, that's because the only reason we are afraid to offend people is because the conservative movement really cares about having the left like them. The left are never going to like you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but it's never happening.
Well, I think it's why people like you and myself and Sam Bamford have broken through, because we really don't care about whether the left likes us or not. In fact, I see it as a badge of honour if they really hate me, because I think that
they love you, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I reckon it's a weird theory that deep down they love us.
Oh, really?
Well, it's like, treating me and keeping keen, right? So I think deep down, like, if we actually got to have a coffee or a drink with these guys, I reckon by the end of that, like, deep down I like Joanna, deep down I like George.
Yeah.
I got a weird theory they're actually obsessed with us. Like, think about it, their whole lives are based on, like, destroying you. That's like an obsession. They're obsessed with you, Joanna. They love you with all their heart. Their entire lives are built on you. Like, think about that. That's a deep form of love. It's like in a weird, skewed way, but they love you. They watch every single video you do. They care about your rallies. Like, I mean, these guys love you more than some of your lovers do. They're obsessed by you, Joanna. So, I think deep down they're just confused. And I go back to the whole Christian thing. I think Christians need to start going, enough of this like material blindness. Like, no, there is a material world. There are differences in it. I'm not saying, okay, fine, let's acknowledge that one culture might have differences that are not compatible with Australian life. I'm not saying we have to go out and kill everyone. That's not my argument here. I'm not saying with World War II, like Hitler, Winston Churchill levels of destruction here. I'm just saying, as a country, we need to identify with our races, our cultures, our norms, all the things that make material Australia, our environment, our resources, everything about Australia needs to be defined, because if we can't define what Australia is, then we're basically this. We're like a transgender. Like, are we a transgender country, or are we a country that can identify who we are?
It's interesting. My family does park run on a Saturday morning. Look, this is not my ideal way to spend a Saturday morning. James and I do day night on Friday night, and I always have a glass of wine, and I like to sleep in on a Saturday. But the kids all want to go and do it, so we do it, and I sometimes do it too. But what is interesting is there's about 80 or so people that do it down south where we do it, and it is largely white people, and then it's my little brown kids and me running. And I just think that there should be not an expectation that you do park run, but just an expectation that if you come to Australia, you actually appreciate this beautiful land. The bush and the gum trees, the rivers, the beach, the athleticism of the country, just that you actually get out into nature and explore it. I just that you drive around the country. Like John Howard tried to do that citizenship test, which I think it didn't work. No. I get where he was trying to get to, but it didn't work, and it wasn't the right way to do it. But you do want people to come here and to love this country. You don't want them to come here and just bring what they had and replicate it here and never challenge themselves.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. I think the 8%, 20% threshold's perfect. I'm not saying no to immigration. I'm saying you need to have a fine balance.
Well, I'll tell you, there are visa categories that are scams. So in my view, and this is controversial for me to say it, and in fact I was at something recently with a whole bunch of scholars, and I said two things, because you had to say your ideas.
Yeah.
And it was Chatham House rules, so I can't say what it was and where I was. But basically my two ideas were restrict immigration from Islamic majority countries, and secondly, abolish the international student visa.
Yeah.
And there was actually more appetite for the second one, because I guess it felt less intense. But interestingly, a number of people came up to me afterwards and said, I agree with you on both. But they had to say it really quietly, because they felt really nervous about social ostracization. But the reason why I say the international student visa is because, so if we've got 2.9 million temporary migrants, close to 1 million, so about 800,000 are coming on the international student visa or the graduate study visa. So you come to Australia, you can bring a partner and children, you're studying, you're paying to study at a university or a private college. Some of these private colleges are just literally visa factories. The people that benefit from students coming over are the vice chancellors and the universities, because their research budgets and huge salaries are coming from international student education. They're getting less funding from federal governments, and the money is coming, and they can't charge domestic students much more because they're not going to keep coming. But international students will pay whatever it takes, because they're not paying for education, they're paying for migration. Yeah. They know that if they come here, they get access to the labour market, as does their spouse. They also know that once they do that, they can get a graduate study visa for up to 4 years, at which point they can find a pathway to permanent residency. So it's this system that we now have of multi-step migration, where we're selling education, but what we're really selling is migration.
For chance to live here,
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean...
And it's a scam.
But it's a big business, and that's why...
And when I did the migration review for the government, the universities lobbied so hard to keep the gig going.
Yeah.
And if, Pauline is speaking now about the international student visa scam, I don't think she's gone as far as what I'm proposing. I think she's just talking about cutting off partner visas. But the reality is, you mention this in the public square and the universities will put their dogs on you, like all of their money and resources and their PR firms on you to say that this is wrong, it's going to destroy the economy. I think it was $5 billion University of New South Wales and Sydney are getting from international student income.
Yeah.
So there's huge money in this.
Yeah, it's a big... Well, that's why the merger was such a big deal, because it ripped the soul and heart of Adelaide University. Adelaide University was its own thing, and there's a lot of professors there. I won't say this publicly, but they're not happy with what's happened.
Yeah,
they're really unhappy.
Yeah,
because it's fundamentally altered. It's turned the Adelaide University and this whole merger into it's just a big business. It's just like another money laundering session.
I hate the logo.
The logo's terrible, and it was designed not even in South Australia, by the way.
Yeah, and it just speaks to nothing of the history of us.
No. Well, but the problem is the old Adelaide University logo is Anglo-Saxon designed with the coat of arms. That's a very Scottish, Irish, English tradition. So they can't have that. They're like, nah, that's too Anglo-Saxon. We're going to get killed.
So now we've got something very nebulous and woke and apparently very contemporary, but means nothing.
Well, that's what I mean. I want to go back to full circle. My whole point is, so this is the fundamental difference between the left and the right, right? The left is fundamentally... They exist in a space of moral non-realism. So to them, the material world is not real. It is something that's part of the fantasy world. So things like having 100 genders is something that's possible in this moral realism. Thing like abortion, for example, they don't see a fetus of a child as a real human. Mm-hmm. So if you actually listen to all the arguments of the left, none of it's based in actual objective reality. It's all based in like the fantasy world. And as humans, we have an imagination. So imagination means you have the capabilities of imagining anything. You can almost imagine anything you want. The only thing you can't imagine is being the tallest woman and the shortest woman at the same time. There's some like certain things that your mind can't truly imagine unless there's a paradox, right? So the left operate in fantasy world, right? And the right operate in, there is a material world, there are objective facts and reality. And as a human, as a conservative, what's important is that these things have existed our entire human history. So 700,000 years of human history, there are some certain truths that have existed that whole time for thousands of years, right? And our job is to try and conserve those things, while the left are like, no, we need to pick apart those things.
You and I agree that there are objective truths that we need to conserve.
Yeah.
I will tell you this story about my kids.
Yeah.
So in Watson's Bay, which is a really posh area in Sydney, and there's this cool playground, and there's these shade sails, and you know how my kids are climbers.
Yeah.
So they had climbed to the top, and they were having the greatest time on the top of these shade sails, and all the normal kids were just on the ground playing on the slides and the swings. But somebody comes past and they said, look, you can't be up there, it's unsafe, you better come down. They were unsupervised, we let our kids roam.
Just do it,
You've seen them. You've seen them walking on Highway Street barefoot.
Yeah, like after rally, I saw your kids just like walking around, like got it back, and I was like, what are you guys doing?
they told me they bumped into you.
Like the Rugrats or something.
Yeah, they said you looked somewhat concerned. But anyway, this person says to them, you've got to get down, it's the shade sails, this is too high. And one of my kids yelled out, oh, it's okay, we actually identify as monkeys.
Oh.
Yeah, and the person, because it's Watson's Bay, so the bougie area, pretty woke, they didn't know what to do, because they were like, well, maybe these kids really do identify as monkeys. Yeah. And then the kids started making monkey noises, and the person just left. And okay, on the one level, you could say that's very rude and disrespectful, but I actually gave them points for being so creative.
Hey, look, you to weaponize what the left do to us, right? So the left are all about, you have to accept our fantasy, so you might as well like make fun of it.
Well,
right?
I said to the kids, I actually, that was really ingenious, and I don't think it was unsafe, and shade sails didn't break, so, you know, but it's ridiculous when we can make, obviously my kids aren't monkeys, even if they choose to identify as monkeys, just like a boy who chooses to identify as a girl is not actually a girl.
Yeah.
This is the consequence of this insane idea from the left that you can imagine reality.
Well, it became popularised in the 1960s with liberalism. So liberalism is what started this whole thing, right? So that's why I'll go as far as I'm saying there are definitely racial differences, there are definitely cultural differences, and there's differences in any subatomic particle. There's a difference. I mean, there's differences in particles themselves. That's why we have the periodic table. There are differences in the material world. Acknowledging those differences and building rules around those differences doesn't make you hateful. It just makes you pragmatic. So we have to be pragmatic with the way we treat other peoples, other cultures, other religions, right? You have a qualm with Islam, for example. So do I. Me personally, I don't like Islam because, for me, historically, Islam destroyed my country, took my city, and they beheaded my great-grandfather, right? So I have a big issue with Islam. So materially, all the evidence and patterns, and pragmatically, I look at Islam and go, well, Islam has historically and fundamentally been nothing but oppressive towards my people as Christians, has nothing but destructive and destroyed my people. And that's why I'm here in the first place. Like, a part of me as a Greek goes, I wish my country didn't get destroyed by the Ottomans and we weren't ruled for 400 years. I wish Greece was a powerful nation, was like another European country that was successful. I wish I didn't have to be here in Australia fundamentally. Like, there's like a spiritual part of me. It's like, I wish I could just be like a proud Greek, but because of what happened to my country because of Islam, and just because of non-stop war and genocide, like we got genocide, millions of us were killed, right? As I said, my great-grandpa was literally decapitated in his village in front of his entire family. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we had to deal with, which has altered, history forever. So the reason why I'm grateful to be in Australia, as a Greek Australian, the reason why I'm happy to be here is because my country did get absolutely body slammed for hundreds of years. And Australia opened its gates to my family to come here and start a new life. And as Christians, we respected the laws here. We respected the people. We went for our own traumas. Like, Greeks were called horrible things. We weren't even considered white. We were considered like weirdos. We were called wogs, big nose, all this terrible stuff. But at the end of the day, I acknowledge, and my family, I think, deep down acknowledges that we had to go through almost like a bullying phasing stage of Australia, because that, rigorous bullying helped control us. And that's the problem here. Like, we got all these migrants coming here who want to bring their own cultures here, bring their own norms here, and no one's bullying them, saying, no, you shut up. This is Australia. You got to follow our rules. You don't bring your rules into our own country.
Well, I think we're going the other way as well, where we're saying they can bring adverse cultural practices and we can't actually say anything about it because that would be not racist, inclusive. It would be racist. So
and they want to bring Sharia law.
The federal court decision in Marine Faruqi versus Pauline Hanson specifically identifies the fact that you can't say piss off back to Pakistan because even though Marine Faruqi is allowed to say that the Queen, she's not mourning the death of the Queen because the Queen was a colonialist and a genocidal, leader of a genocidal regime. Like, she's allowed to say that, but Pauline can't say the alternative because we don't have free speech because it's incompatible with multiculturalism.
Yeah.
Free speech isn't a value that's in Islam. It's antithetical to Islam. It's a value that's Western, based on Christian foundations. But also, even things like sex-selective abortion, which we now know is happening in New South Wales and Western Australia, you're not allowed to, the left is saying you can't make it illegal because that would be racist.
Yep.
Yet we know it's happening, that girls are being killed on the basis of their gender in ethnic communities in Sydney. And we actually know it in Victoria too from a La Trobe study. So there's multiple studies proving this.
Yep. And
why wouldn't it be happening? It's happening. It's happened for decades in India and China. China's got a demographic crisis of not enough females. India has 6 million fewer girls by 2030. Why would it not be happening here when we've got pretty much open borders to people from India and China?
Well, this is exactly right. I need people to wake up to this, and I want you to think about this as well, and you can challenge me on this. Australia needs to behave like a sports team, right? If you're a sports team, who are you going to bring? What players are you bringing to your team? You bring the best players from the different teams. So if Australia is going to get migrants from, let's just say, India, you don't want just the freaking low IQ, low educated individuals. You want their highest quality.
Okay, but the thing is, George, this is so the country right from 1996, because this is what I've studied and researched about. Since 1996, we've always said our immigration program is about bringing in the best and the brightest from all the parts of the world.
Yeah.
So we've said that, but then what we've done in practice is to have side door and back door visas that are pretty widely open and bring in huge amounts of people with lower skills and less experience.
Yeah.
So you've got your front door, which is quite narrow. and it's saying we want the best and the brightest, but then you've got the backpacker visa, the international student visa. You've also got so many people on bridging visas because they're coming on planes.
Yep.
So we had the boat people crisis back in the Howard years, but that has got shut down, and now people are just coming on planes,
Yeah,
and then they just
fly here,
lose
get in a
themselves
boat.
in the economy, and
Yeah.
we're not bringing in the best and the brightest because our entire migration program doesn't work. It doesn't. It's not meeting its needs. It's a complete mess.
Well, and that's my point. Like Australia's team, let's say our team, is not bringing the best players. So what does that mean?
But politicians say that. They use that language. It's not controversial to use that language. But what would be controversial is the policy prescriptions that it necessitates. If we really believe that we should operate like an elite sporting team and only bring in the best and the brightest, we would shut down some of these visas.
100%.
And we would close the door on those visas. Instead, the policymakers are obsessed with the NOM, the numbers that are coming in through the permanent program. But that's not the problem. The problem is the temporary program, which is a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point. We need to really plug up the holes here. And as I said, like, when the Greeks and Italians were first brought in, there was a very, the decision was, what theology do they follow? What kind of skills do they bring? Are they hardworking? Where do they come from? There was like very particular, meticulous ways of immigration. So this is an issue. Like we Australians, and especially conservative Australians, need to not be afraid of being labelled racist or whatever other word, Islamophobic or whatever. And we need to be particular. We need to be choosy. Like heaven has a gate, and if you're a naughty boy or girl, you're not going to heaven.
Yeah.
Like that is it's a policy of God. It should be a policy of humanity.
Any successful country has a strong border.
Yeah.
And I, as a Catholic, I sometimes think about this because we recognise the equal dignity of each person, and we want to be welcoming and loving. But Vatican City has a border.
Yeah.
You can't. There's guards all around it. You can't just like set up shop there and put your tent up.
Yeah.
Because people often say, "Oh, well, Jesus was a refugee," right? But the thing is, any successful nation state has a border, just like a family has a border, a house has a border. I think the left has been so successful in making people afraid of looking like they're not nice.
Yeah.
That now people on the right don't stand for anything.
Yeah, well, that's my issue, and that's why fundamentally, like, I'm having huge, like, I'm literally, everyone hates me right now because no one's happy with my advice. But this is the same advice I've been for 8 years, and this goes to every political party, One Nation, Liberals, Labor, whatever, whoever talks to me, right? I've been very staunch on, like, we have to be very particular. We have to be very Australia first. We can't let foreign interests get in the way. Like, it has to be, like, I'm treating Australia like I'm a football manager. Like, my team Arsenal just won the league last year. That's because our coach came in, got rid of all the shit players, brought in the best talent, youthful talent, skilled players, set up a formation, made a very strict regime inside the club. That's what I want to do with Australia. I want strict regime. I want the best players. I want the best academy. I want the best education, the best food, the best water. Like everything has to be top notch.
Are you going into politics?
No, I don't know. No, probably not. No, because,
sounds like you should.
No, well, like I do, but I don't, because material. This is the problem with politics. Materially, once you enter the machine of politics, you are like, there are rules. Like I can't. Would George be able to be his true self in politics? No. Would any political party want to take someone like me on? Probably not, because I want to be so pragmatic and so, like, I want to be the most rawest, essential version of the truth, and as close to, my values as possible. That would cause a lot of problems. The only way I could get involved in politics is if one party was willing to take on me and be pragmatic with me, and we figure out ways to get around it. Because the problem is, like, if I come out and say, "Oh, okay, guys, there's some cultures and races that are shit, let's get them out," they're going to be like, "What the fuck? This guy's crazy. He's a racist. He's a Hitler." I'm like, no. I'm not saying we got to put them away and like do terrible things. I'm just saying we got to clean up the country. There's like 2 million people here, I'd say, safely, who shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like there's a change. a turning of the tide somewhat. And even just last week when my husband and I did a podcast episode about Vicky Chapman turning, the former Attorney General and Deputy Premier, turning up to the Liberal Party Women's Council and trying to stop us filming, and then there was a big brouhaha. And then in the podcast the next day, James makes the comment about, she looked like she was a witch, she was dressed in all black, and then Lucy Hood from Labor tried to make this sound like it was a terrible thing. And, how could you say this? How disrespectful of the first female Deputy Premier of the state, And then I had all these journalists calling me. I was travelling to regional New South Wales for some other work, to try and oust some nationals, pro-abortion nationals from their seats. But they ended up sending a camera crew, and they were essentially asked me, there's so much hate in the world, don't you think you shouldn't be calling people witches? And we just responded, it was kind of funny because I actually didn't call Vicky Chapman a witch, James did, but the media they couldn't run that story. Dr. Joe's husband called Vicky Chapman a witch, so they just went with me. Yeah. And then I decided to just own it
one
because,
flesh.
One flesh. We're married, sacramental marriage, Since 2009, baby, we have been one flesh. And so, and I just said, look, we use the word witch as not as an insult, but as a technical term. If you look at the great Western tradition of the fairy tale in our folklore, the witches were always the evil ones who wanted to kill and hurt children. Yeah, and look at what Vicky Chapman did. Yeah. She presided over the introduction of the most extreme abortion laws in the world, allowing abortion up to birth for any reason. She fought tooth and nail for those laws to pass. Children are now dead because of her, killed right up until birth through an injection of potassium chloride into their hearts. If that's not a witch, I don't know what is.
Which is worse than a witch. She's a fucking bitch.
Yeah, that's going to get us on the news.
No, honestly.
But it just is a truthful and accurate term to describe someone who perpetuates and pursues the killing of children in the womb.
But there you go. There's another example. So the reason why the media, the term witch. So the term witch was given to. So when women started getting educated and reading books and stuff, it changed fundamentally the way women behave because they could read books and they were labelled as witches. So when you learn how to speak words, that was a big deal. So no one, you remember 100 years ago, no one could read essentially. Only priests and scribes and a certain few people could read. So having the ability to read and write was a huge deal. It's basically magic. You could perform magic.
Yeah, it opens
business, anything like that. So the reason why feminists hate the word witch is because you're fundamentally attacking female equality. Because for a long time we believed that women shouldn't be able to read and write because it would cause problems for this world.
What I thought was ridiculous about Lucy Hood was she was saying, how dare you say this about the first female leader of this state, Deputy Premier. And James and I made the point that if you can't on the one hand believe in female equality, that women should be able to do anything a man can do and take all of these positions of leadership in the C-suite and everything, but then on the other hand expect us to have a different standard in how we critique them. Because let's face it, if we'd called Vincent Tarzia a witch or Peter Malinauskas or any manner of insults, because Albanese, I don't like him, but he gets criticised in all manner of ways. Yeah. But do it to a woman in leadership and they cry about the online hate that they're receiving. Like Tanya Plibersek, Katrine Hildyard, Nat Cook, they're all of them cry online and to the leftist media. You see all of these sympathetic stories about all of the hate that they get and how hard it is to be a woman in public life. If you're a woman in public life, you've put your hand up for that position, suck it up and accept it. That's what the men do, and we want to be equal to them. I just sort of, and it's always women on the left who are crying about it. The amount of death threats, rape threats that I get that actually name my children, and I'm never crying about it because I just know that's the price you pay for having a public life, for choosing to do something that is in the public eye. There's costs to it, and it's always the women with the sob stories. And part of me thinks, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but part of me thinks that when they're crying on about online hate, it's to create the base for laws that restrict free speech on social media.
Well, it's not just that. It's also, for example, the reality is there is inequality. Men and women are vastly different in material ways. So
men and women are different. Yeah. So I would say men and women are equal, created equal.
Oh, well,
it says it in the Bible.
Spiritually, we're divinely equal, of course, but not materially.
But they're not the same. So, my husband and I are in a tennis match, unless I get him to drink beer beforehand, I can't win. Yeah. And unfortunately, he's given up alcohol, so I'm just now, like in the early years of marriage, on a Saturday, I would feed him. I feed him the big meal, and then I'd give him beer, and then I'd say, darling, should we go play squash at the courts at Oxford? And then I could beat him.
Yeah.
But only through my feminist wily ways, like, a feeding and drinking.
That's the witch. The alchemy of the...
But now I don't have that avenue because he's given up alcohol. But I think what's that famous case of Serena paying the 200th man in the world and getting smashed 6 love. Like, physically, we're clearly different.
Well, not just physically, even like mentally, reaction times are different. Like women,
there are differences.
Even in car incidents, right? Women won't necessarily move out. Like if a guy sees a bird on the street, but a guy will just run over the bird most of the time.
Yeah.
Women, typically, because they have like this motherly instinct, they will try and swerve to save the bird. So that's why.
So I haven't looked at those studies, but in our sample size of our family, James does all the driving. Like, I have to do the driving sometimes out of necessity because he's not around. I hate it. I'm a bad driver. I meet all the Asian stereotypes of being a bad driver and female stereotypes as well.
It's double whammy.
Yeah, you don't want to see me on the road.
But the problem, this my issue is that there are definitely differences, and even in political leadership, males historically have always been better historical leaders. There's obviously a few outliers. You have female leaders like Europa, who was the mother of Alexander the Great. She was a phenomenal leader, arguably one of the best leaders ever. You could even make an argument that Europa was, like, I'd say top 5, maybe one of the best, even better than men.
It could come down to...
But this is important. But in a macro sense, you can't... The left like to use outliers to go, oh, look, see, there's one female leader like Europa who was better than men. That means all women are equal. I was like, no. Historically, men have been better political leaders, commanders, generals. It just is what it is, because you got to remember, for hundreds of thousands of years, whilst we were living in tribes, men would be out in the wild hunting mammoths, hunting saber-toothed tigers, this is hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, of rewiring, reaction times, trees falling on them, fires. Like, men were out there doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. So this is a very interesting topic as well. So why is the left important? Like, why do we even have the left?
Just on that point about the differences. So I'm happy to look. I don't know enough about that. I'd like to read it. I obviously agree that there are differences in men and women. And
be careful what you read, because the academic industry has been completely.
Of course, you can't. It's really hard now because you can't read a study without knowing that that study's been through the peer review process, which ultimately embeds groupthink. I did an interview with Peter Reid, who contested the climate change orthodoxy and said the reef isn't dying, and it's not. But he got ousted from the academy because he contested the orthodoxy. I was saying things like that to me.
Big academic institutions.
Yeah. So I know that about. It doesn't mean I don't read, but I clearly know that you can't just read something and then go, oh, well, that must be true then.
Yeah.
But having said that, I guess for me, I could acknowledge that there are differences, that men have been physically protecting and providing throughout our history, and we need them in those roles. And that, yes, men might have better reaction times when driving, all of that sort of thing. Men are physically stronger. I think,
and even intelligence levels.
I think where I might draw a line, though, is just then policy prescriptions that come from it. So I might agree, like Jordan Peterson talks about how men are more disagreeable than women. I reckon I'm an outlier on that.
Yeah, definitely. We're right out.
But I think the policy prescription for me of all of these differences wouldn't be something like, well, women shouldn't vote and women can't serve in public office. But I would be prepared to...
So you're a feminist then?
No, I don't like the word feminism because I think the entire movement has been compromised. I can't say that.
Okay.
I just believe that
feminist, like believing that women and men should vote, is a feminist idea.
Well, it was the first wave feminists who fought for women to have the right to vote, and I would stand by that being important.
Okay. I think that's fundamentally, like, let's look at the last 60 years. Are you happy with the way females have been voting for the last 60 years?
I don't think that necessarily then follows that we should take the right to vote away from women. It might be correlative, not causative. So I think that these require deeper conversations.
Yeah, I'm glad you're having this conversation, because I honestly, like, I'm like, I don't know if it's a good idea. Like, if you look at voting patterns in the US, for example, if you look at the way men vote versus women in the US, it's actually, you're like, it's like a big wake up call. Like,
well, of course. I've seen the data on conservative issues, but also specifically on abortion. Young men are becoming increasingly anti-abortion, and they're waking up to it. And across all of the demographics, men are more strongly pro-life than women, but young women in particular are still stubbornly pro-abortion.
Yeah.
And they're refusing to open their minds
And even climate change.
Yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, women are young women in particular are notoriously more woke and liberal than their male counterparts.
And do you know why though? There's actually reasons behind it.
Well,
to do with childbirth. I'm serious.
Can I look? I have not researched this, but my hypothesis is that young women are receiving a lot on their algorithm and in the media and via their peer group, where they're just basically being brainwashed by woke liberalism that teaches them to be nice, care about their parents.
It's part of it, definitely. I think it definitely
and like even if I just compare
behaviour though, right?
Even if I just compare the shit that I watch when I'm binging to what James watches, it's way worse. And I've had to sort of like force myself to go, no, I'm not going to watch that but I've been rewatching Borgen. I don't know if you watched that. I mean, that's really critically acclaimed, but it's for people that don't know about it. Do you think people know what Borgen is? It's
probably not. If you want to explain.
Okay. Well, it was about a woman, Brigitte Nyberg, who ended up becoming the leader of Denmark. And there's 3 seasons of it about being a woman in public office. But what I'm realizing, because I watched this maybe, 5 years ago, and I was definitely coming out of being a woke liberal in that time, but I watched it and loved it. I'm now rewatching it a little bit appalled at all of the leftist agendas, like pro-climate change, pro-Islam, pro-abortion, that are embedded in that show. And the way her marriage operates, where she's so scathing and cold to her husband in the first season, but it's sort of presented as, well, that's what a woman in leadership would do. But if I acted like that, my marriage would break down as well. It's just interesting to me because I think women are being fed a diet that is brainwashing them to think stupidly.
But why though? Like, look, think about the case.
Why are they letting themselves be fed this diet, or why are they being fed the diet?
Let me explain something stuff. Okay, this is some stuff that it's old school, right? It's a real.
It sounds like it's going to be really controversial.
Yeah, it might be,
and could get us into trouble.
But that's the thing. I don't care because I don't really care if the life like me anymore, to be honest. But so for thousands of years, it was believed that the reason why women shouldn't vote is because women can't think objectively. Like they're more married into non-realism than men are. Mm-hmm. So the reason why it's important, and this is why in ancient Greece only men voted, because men fundamentally believed that only men could see the world for what it truly is, not what they wish it to be. Mm-hmm. So women in particular, because they're mothers, wish to give their child the best chance possible. And a true mother would want their child to have the best circumstances. So that requires a bit of imagination. So if you're living in a little tribe and you've got no food, it's been weeks and weeks, part of being a good mother is and you're looking after a child who's probably starving, is to feed the child positive affirmations that they're going to be okay, even if it's not going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Even if there's 10 saber-toothed tigers outside, the mother is going to be there for the child with ultimate love. So it's actually a beautiful spiritual thing that women typically are not really, they tend to be not with reality itself, because it's a form of ultimate love towards their children. So that's the motherly instincts of a mother. Where men are there's 10 saber-toothed tigers outside, we're probably all going to die, and we're going to fight to our last second. But reality is my child might be eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger.
Okay.
So that's that. So these. Yeah. So if you're in the elite ruling class and you realize women are biologically built to be in this non-moral, realistic stage of their life, more inherently because of their biology and the way they operate through 700,000 years of evolution, then what's the best way to alter society forever through liberalism? You feed the algorithms with a bunch of woke stuff, you feed the media with a bunch of woke stuff, and you'll see that over time that equates to the voting patterns that women have versus men. So you're seeing young men going, holy shit, abortion's evil, because men can see the world for what it truly is. They're yeah, abortion is evil, we need to stop this. And of course there's outliers like yourself, for example, but women in general don't see abortion as evil. They think abortion is a human right. They think abortion is this amazing thing that's so, it's magic to them. Oh my God, I can get my kid killed and there's no consequences. That's magic to them. That's completely detached from reality. The reality is you're taking a child and you're ripping its arms apart and you're literally doing an evil act. But women will somehow separate from themselves, and you see it in the voting patterns. This is where these conversations can't happen anymore. They used to happen, but now you say this, you're breaking apart the liberalism idea. And the reason why young men are afraid to say this, or someone like me is not afraid to say this anymore, because I feel it's my duty to share the truth that has been known for thousands of years, even though there are going to be consequences for me. But the reality is I can't live my life as a good, honourable human who actually cares about women and men and humanity and God and Christ, without saying the things that might not be like the popular thing to say, but need to be said, so we can actually sit down one day and actually have a proper conversation. Okay, if these things
But George, how do you explain that although the data shows that young men are rejecting wokeism at greater numbers than young women, it's not like it's anything close to even 90%, let alone 100%. I mean, I think this is, I can acknowledge that men and women are different. That's just a biological reality, a scientific fact.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that the differences in biology no doubt relate to and produce
differences as well.
Produce differences then in how they operate in the world.
Yeah.
But I think, again, my fundamental premise being that both genders are equal is that there's a contribution that they both make. Like it's that in a family
like
you need a
yin-yang.
mother. In a family you need a mother and a father. That's the optimal arrangement to raise children. And I think in a government and a society, I think you need men and women to build it. Now, I don't think you need to mandate quotas and equal representation. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
But I do think that you can't, I wouldn't be comfortable at all with designing a system which said men should be in these jobs, women should be in these jobs. Now, I don't agree with all of those like DEI programs that try and force women into STEM and into construction. I think that I think that if more men go into those fields, they go into those fields, and if more women want to go into nursing and teaching, they go into those fields. What happens when you drive past a roadside? It's always like the woman holding the lollipop sign and the men doing the actual construction work. Yeah. And that's because of DEI. Like, we're paying women to hold lollipop signs.
I know,
like,
and they get paid a lot of money.
Yeah. and I just, that to me is like a total waste of time.
Yeah.
But I think if where you end up is saying, well, only men vote and only men serve in public office and hold leadership positions, I would depart. I would say,
well, I'll just say
this.
Right.
That doesn't make me a feminist.
I'll just say this though,
because I don't agree with feminism because of
it does make you a feminist though.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
If you believe women should vote, it's
not necessarily. But okay, so let me think about that. So
I'll say this one thing, right? This is important.
I just think there's no concrete definition that everybody agrees on feminism because there's just so many different strands.
I'll just say this, right? If only men voted, right, and to say that was a policy throughout the entire world, in 10 years there'll be no such thing as abortion. It'll disappear in 10 years.
Well, I just think that's bullshit, because in America, where we have data, I think it's close to 80% of women who walk in for that abortion appointment, they don't have a man with them.
Yeah.
And the single biggest thing we could do to reduce the number of abortions would be for men to step up and support their partners. If we didn't have casual sex and we were having children in the context of marriage, there's lots of things we could do.
No, there's definitely.
But the reality is, like, that's just wrong. Like, I think women deserve responsibility and ownership of the fact that we're killing our children, but men also, and maybe even more so, bear responsibility for the fact that they're not taking responsibility for the children that they're creating.
I agree. See, we're in agreement with that. Yeah. But the problem is,
and if you just give men the right to vote, are we just going to somehow end up in this utopia where
it wouldn't be utopia, but it would be a lot more pragmatic. So, like, I just think fundamentally, if men only voted, they would see that, okay, well, objectively speaking, abortion is completely morally wrong. It needs to be gone. And it would just happen. It would happen overnight.
No, it wouldn't.
Look at the voting data. It would.
No, it would not happen. That's insane.
It would. You'd see it across the world. Okay, so abortion banned from every country. Men only vote. Abortion is gone. No more abortion.
So your hypothesis is really, if we got rid of the right to vote for women in 10 years...
I don't think most men should vote as well, by the way.
In 10 years, we would end abortion.
Well, I'm getting to the point now where, like, I don't think people under 35 should vote. Mm-hmm. I don't think most men should vote. I think you should be like an actual competent man who's like has a job for a long time, who pays a good level of taxes, who is educated. I don't think, like, in England now they're trying to get 12-year-olds to vote. Now 16-year-olds can vote, and they want to get 12-year-olds to start voting in England.
I didn't know 16-year-olds could vote in England.
So in some parts, I
don't think we should lower the voting age.
They want to make young people. Okay, what benefit? Think about the left, right? Kids. Why would you want kids to vote for? Because kids, right, at a young age, their imaginations are wild. So, have you heard the saying, when you're a young person, you're a lefty, then you grow older?
Of course, yeah.
It's because when you're a young kid, your imagination is rampant. You can play, like, do you remember the time where you stopped playing with toys because it became unfun anymore? There's like a certain age. I think I was about 11 years old for me, where I picked up a toy and I was like, this is not fun anymore. Like, my imagination's kind of gone. Because your brain is actually starting to become more advanced and be able to process reality itself, become pragmatic, understand that this is your imagination is becoming almost like imagination for a kid is a tool to have fun and to explore, to learn, right? But as you get older, it goes away. And I guess part of good creators and artists is they never lose that imagination. They kind of have this like inner child aspect to them where they can like write a story or write a fantasy. And that's why we've got things like Lord of the Rings, we've got things like poems, we've got things like songs. A lot of this is like their inner child experience, like the imagination gone wild. So if you have an entire population voting age of 12, right, think about the consequences of that. It goes back into the non-moral realism part. Kids are going to go, oh, well, climate change is real, we're going to vote for climate change now. Oh, no, abortion is the right thing to do. Like, women should have the right to, kill their children at any moment until the moment of death. Like, it would create all these circumstances where the left would be constantly winning.
So
that's why in America, they don't want voter ID, because they know that all the legal migrants coming in who are doing these votes, they want to stay in the country.
Yep. There's a lot of what you say that I agree with. There's definitely...
By the way, just so you know, I'm not married on these ideas.
You're exploring them. There's places where we depart. So I think, in my mind, we've got to a place where we've said there's a difference between an adult and a child.
Definitely.
And that adults have the right to vote and children don't. And there's things that children can't do by virtue of their age.
And their imagination.
But we've also said that, and we've said that, even if you're a really precocious child and you're really smart, like say you're a child that's a bit of a genius and you can go to university at the age of 12, you still don't get the right to vote, because we've just got a hard cut-off policy with no exceptions.
Yep.
You have to be an adult, which is defined as over 18. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. But
why do you believe that men and women, and also just some men, so... But
I don't think that. I think the problem I have with your idea...
It's not my idea, by the way. But
your thought bubble.
Thoughts, yeah.
Is just that when we start attributing rights to certain subsections of the population, we go down a path where it leads to some people having rights and some people not having rights. And if you just...
What's wrong with that?
Particularly in the context of the right to life being the most fundamental of all of the rights, that's how we get the contravention of the right to life, because we say that by virtue of your age, stage of development, race or disability, and location, you don't have the right to life. And so it concerns me when we start to say our attribution of human rights to a group of people is removed because of particular attributes, because you don't have a job or you haven't met the intellectual criteria. I see red flags jumping up all over the place.
Okay, on that then. So I guess what you're trying to say is, and this is like kind of the macro...
And obviously you can see that the left would say you introduce that system where you have to be a contributing male member of a significant age in order to be able to vote. You could see that you might introduce that system, but then somebody else, rather nefarious, takes that system and then...
uses it to their own advantage.
Removes all the Christians from being able to vote. And
so
because you've now created a system where you've said you can attribute rights to certain groups, that they're not human rights, they're not universal. So you've created that, they've now used it to achieve this.
Okay, so you're saying that almost like the left are a necessary evil to cause balance in the political force. So the reality is, right, if you let's just say we do create a society that's only men are voting and they're like wealthy, intelligent, hyper achievers, right? Mm-hmm. Then what happens is society becomes so pragmatic that we become almost like cold-hearted, essentially, because like we will only do what we think is the right thing to do at all times, and that it makes the most sense. You're like missing the magic of the left. You're missing the magic of the imagination, where there's outliers that could maybe like take the human spirit or nature somewhere else that might have not happened if we were too pragmatic or too logical about it. Are you saying that sometimes being too logical can have a negative effect on human society?
Well, I think the contestation of ideas is really important, but I also don't even know if your proposal is the most logical. I'm not certain that it is.
Why?
Well, because I think that in what you've described, it requires a man to vote and act in the best interest of whom? Themselves, their family
and God,
and or their nation.
Yeah.
They're not always going to coalesce.
Yeah.
Right? So as a man, I may want I may want multiple wives because my wife is now fat and
Okay,
not
I get
attractive
that.
like
So
she
this
was.
is how I'll combat
no,
that.
but I also might want the biggest property on the street because that'll be the nicest place for me to raise my family.
Yeah.
But that necessarily contradicts with the desires of my neighbour or maybe the interests of my nation. If I'm an employer and I run a big business, obviously I want to bring in a cheap labour supply, but that clearly goes against the national interest of keeping wages and conditions high.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I feel like we're complicated people and our interests that we have to different...
So greed would get in the way.
Well, yes. So we've got
of-
self-interest and then we've got common
So
interest.
sin, the evil nature. Okay, so then the argument could be that if we were we're experimenting here, this is fun, guys, by the way.
Yeah, I had no idea we were going down this rabbit warren.
Yeah, but this is, so you'd say that, okay, so the criteria would be, okay, this is in this fantasy world that we've created. Like,
Well, you've created. I don't want to get blamed for this. I don't want the advertiser to have a headline, Dr. Joe's friend. Because, I got blamed for James calling Vicky Chapman a witch. We're not even sacramentally one. I have no part in this.
Yeah, I have a big part of this. So you'd say fundamentally, right, you not only do you have to be a man, you also have to be a good Christian man. Theologically, you have to be sound. Yes, you're a sinner, but you are constantly praying to Christ. You're constantly asking for mercy. You're constantly trying to become a better version of yourself. And all the policies and the way you vote have to benefit the nation, what Christ, like your message of Christ, and also the greater good of the people around you.
George, I see what you want,
Yeah.
but you can't legislate for that. Because the problem
Such a
is,
shame. Such a shame.
only God can see man's heart, right?
Yeah.
And I think we only see the outside, and so you have the problem of someone might look like a really great Christian man. He might look really
Like the
upstanding,
Antichrist figure.
but he's got a secret porn addiction,
Yeah.
and he's cheating on his wife with OnlyFans.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not moral, and I wouldn't necessarily want him being the person choosing
But that still
everything.
comes under, because in Christianity, okay, even a good Christian man.
Or maybe he looks really great, but he doesn't actually spend time with his kids.
That's true, but
He's a great provider, though. He runs a great business,
but
contributes
not all
to the
men.
community.
I don't think men fundamentally have to be their kids 24/7.
No, they don't, but they do have to be present. I think there is...
They have to have an impact on their life.
Yeah,
in a positive way.
so I think what you want is... I think you're trying to grapple with the problem of sin, and you want us to be good in the way that we were meant to be.
Yeah.
And then you want us to govern society with that in mind and with those people who are righteous.
Well,
you can't legislate for it.
Well, yeah, maybe you can't. But the problem, and I think that's probably why we keep getting messes, right? But I think the problem is men are sinful, women are also sinful, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that you have to find the perfect man. Even the most perfect king might have a porn addiction or have all these addictions, right? Because that's just...
Well, it's just the nature of
humanity.
I'm not perfect either.
That's the original sin.
That's the other thing I struggle with, but I have other struggles, with pride and vanity.
So I'm not making an argument we need these perfect superhumans who never sin, right? Because otherwise everyone would be Christ, essentially, if everyone was Christ. But that's non-realistic. That's, we can all strive to be in theosis and be closer to God.
I think what we need is a return to our Christian roots. If St. Augustine said, my heart finds no rest until it rests in you, O Lord. If as a society and as a culture, as Western civilization, we returned to Christianity and rejected wokeism and liberalism
but rejecting liberalism means you have to reject the concept of equal rights to vote, potentially.
Not necessarily, George.
No, you don't think so?
No,
Okay.
I think that...
No, I'm genuinely curious because do you generally think, as long as women can vote, do you think abortion will ever... I don't think abortion will ever leave
I think
as long as
abortion...
women
I believe that abortion will end in my lifetime, and that there's a genuine good faith belief, and I believe that it will be women who will be very important to achieving that.
There'll be a spiritual revolution for women?
No, well, I just look at my own content, because you know how you can see the demographics of who's following you. For me, it is about 70 to 80% women.
Your following is a small sample size of the total population.
No, I know,
right?
but imagine what we're talking about is widespread cultural change where we're returning back to Christian values.
How would that happen, though?
Well, how does it happen? Well, I think it happens through people like Charlie Kirk, and it happens through
He's dead now, so what are we going to do? Like, that's what I'm saying.
Well, isn't it the whole, like, here I am, Lord, send me kind of thing? Like, as in we're all Charlie now. Like, we all have to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And I look at the bird flip girls and people like Elspeth McKellar and Lola Papula, Pieta Winkles. Like, these are just young women choosing to speak up. And
so you do think these young
women... And there
women...
are so many women that are now being influenced by them.
Yeah.
I think when it was just me, people went, oh, well, look, that's Jo. Like, you know, she's a particular type of person. But now seeing so many women come forward on the abortion issue, that is having cultural impact. The abortion rate is at its lowest in 25 years, George.
That. Yeah, it's awesome.
Like it's now at 12.6 per 1,000 women of childbearing age that are having abortions. It used to be at 17%. Like, these are huge drops. If you look at the last couple of years, we're probably saving between 350 to 400 babies in South Australia. This rate was increasing. It's now at its lowest level in 25 years. There's a cultural shift, and it's happening because people are speaking up. Women aren't just, like, I think women aren't dumb, George. They're just brainwashed. They've just been brainwashed by a culture that has told them that they shouldn't think about this, because to do that they would be, breaking one of the infallible rules of second wave feminism, which is that abortion is healthcare.
I want to agree with you, but my only problem is what common sense and being pragmatic has told me that I'm not saying that women are brainwashed because they're easy to brainwash. If that makes sense, through the culture. Men
are easy to brainwash.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, but I'm just saying...
I won't bring up Andrew Tate because we've argued about him in the past.
I'm just saying, on average, because of the biological nature of motherhood and the womb and what that means fundamentally as a mother and what that represents spiritually, biologically, women in particular are the nurturers, are the caretakers, are the ones to make sure their kids feel loved and nurtured for as they grow into men or women.
And it's precisely those attributes where... if we speak to women about what abortion is and we explain the procedures, the injection of potassium chloride into the heart of a child while they are fully conscious, something we don't even do to animals, or second trimester, forcibly ripping the limbs of a child, the legs and the arms from their sockets and pulling them out piece by piece, or in the first semester, suctioning them out or starving them of their nutrient supply and their oxygen supply. It's precisely because women do have a desire to love and nurture and care that when you speak about those procedures and they realise what it is, they say, I don't want to have a part in that. Or it's precisely because women are made this way that when they see a photo of baby Samuel at 16 weeks who survives his abortion and he's born sucking his thumb for 30 minutes, and they see that photo on the internet, I get inundated with messages from women who've had abortions who say to me, Jo, I didn't know. Like, there was that one woman who said, I had an abortion at 17 weeks. Seeing Samuel, in fact, she'd had 2, but one of them was at 17. And she said to me, I saw Samuel's face online and I realised that's what I did to my child. He looked like that.
Yeah.
I am now anti-abortion. I think there are differences between men and women. They are God-given differences, and God in his infinite wisdom created men and women in this way. And they both have important contributions to make to humanity. And to end great evil, we need men and women.
Yeah, well, look, that's definitely, true. But the problem is women and men are equal in the sense where spiritually we make sense as a collaboration. Like, we come together. But those material differences do have consequences. And my only concern is, if we're not being pragmatic about this and we are ignoring those differences for the sake of liberalism, then what are those consequences? Because for me, all I've seen is more abortion up to birth, a removal of Christianity from most schooling systems, a removal of Christianity in most nations now that are Western, white guilt, climate change.
Do you put it all down to feminism?
Yeah, I think feminism is definitely...
I would agree that when Betty Friedan...
I never used to think this way, by the way, but then I've been digging some deep... So the reason why I even got prompted into this is I looked at the history of South Australia's parliament. So South Australia's parliament was the first parliament in human history to allow women to vote. The first to allow women to politics, and if you look at what happened after that, they were the first to pro-abortion, pro-gay rights, like all this stuff came out of South Australian Parliament.
But
so
again,
we're like the home of evil.
Again, I don't think that's necessarily causative. I might say that would be correlative.
I hope so.
It could be because of figures like Don Dunstan, for example. You know, but just circuit-breaking figures who set us on a particular path. I love,
as I said, female leaders. Like my favorite leader of all time is Europa, Alexander the Great's mother. Incredible woman. She led armies against men. She literally defeated men at war. She held the empire alive for 30 years after Alexander the Great's death, kept his son alive. It was a big deal. Then you have people like Joan of Arc, like these incredible female figures, but these are the outliers. And I would say, I would put you in the same category. I would say you're like a Joan of Arc. Like you have the spirit of Joan of Arc. You have the spirit of Europa inside Joanna Howe, right? So I'm not trying to take away your ability to do that. I'm just saying you're a very rare person, Joanna.
I don't feel personally...
But you're creating like a little army of, like, the bird flop is like a little army of female warriors, like the shield maiden of Europe, Eva. Like, we have these like...
I don't feel personally insulted. I feel concerned about the policy prescriptions that come from this worldview. Yeah. I think that's why I'd need to...
I'm also concerned about it, by the way. I'm experimenting
with it, and I really like that you are, because I just think we've been too afraid to kind of have these conversations. I think they're really interesting to have. But I guess and just to get back to feminism, I can see and I can acknowledge that grave evil has come from feminism.
Yeah.
And
the invention of the pill.
Yeah. So the sexual revolution and second wave feminism have had hugely negative consequences. So, but when you look at 1960s feminism in the US and you look at the meeting of the National Organization of Women, and Betty Friedan was leading it at the time, the vote on abortion, like to put abortion into the feminist platform, it won by a handful of votes. Like I think it was like less than 11, and 50% of the women left the National Organization of Women because of that vote, because they were so angry that they were putting into the platform the right of a woman to kill her child.
Yeah.
Now, that then affected that's caused and been responsible for the death of millions worldwide.
Yeah, 75 million a year, right?
75 million. So
more than World War II every year.
It's huge, but it was such a close vote, and amongst women.
Yeah.
And so I guess
even the vote for, so even this could be wrong, but historically you fact check me. But from what I understand, even when women were possessed, like should we have the right to vote? Apparently, women overall were like, no, we shouldn't. Like it was like 60% no women. So you're right. There are like, I think back then women acknowledged, like, and they understood the world. They were more wise. They were more wise. They were more pragmatic. They were more Christ-like. They had all these things, and then through time, through liberalism, through the sexual revolution, through social media, it's like over time.
I think it's easy to look back and think that's what they were. I don't know if that hypothesis would bear out, George. Like it is easy to look back and think those were better times.
I'd say more wise times. Potentially, because I get told the only reason women were made to vote, this is the conspiracy around, like, economic conspiracy, is the only reason they wanted women to vote is because this is the whole story. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but the only reason the elites at the time wanted women to vote was because, one, they could tax half the population, because if you don't vote, you don't get taxed. So then they could tax half the population, then they would take the mother, right, who now has to work, right, who now has the right to vote, take them out of the household, right? So now you don't have the mother in the household teaching the kids, nurturing the kids,
George,
the values. Now you have what happened next, the education system. Okay, so you work at the education system, right? What has the education system become? It's become a factory for the left to now promote Marxism, socialism to our kids, to teach them about LGBTQ, to sexualize kids. That's why homeschooling is growing so rapidly, because they realize that this, because there's no mother at home now to teach the kids, now the government's teaching the kids. And what is the government teaching these kids? They're teaching about climate change, LGBTQ, doing welcome to country, and making 5-year-olds touch the ground and doing welcome to country. Like, this has all become from the outcome of this feminism. The first wave feminism has caused, consequences like this.
So I think my issue is that I agree with the problems that you say we now have.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% about those problems. But where I depart is you saying it was all caused by X, in this case feminism, because when I've read biographies, I don't know it's super well read, but I've read about Elizabeth Nichols, for example, who was part of the movement to get women the right to vote in South Australia, and I've read a few other manuscripts from the time. They were Christian women, like the majority of, and it was the Christian Women's Union that were fighting for women to have the right to vote. These were women that were involved in their families, who really believed in Christ and gave their lives to him, and were very moral women in Australia, I'm talking about. Or someone like Enid Lyons, I don't know if you've read about her, but she was one of the first women in the federal parliament. She had 12 kids, and she was married to Joseph Lyons, a former prime minister. Like, these women were really strong Christian women, and I guess,
but it was different.
I know that the legacy in the, what happened in the late 1960s, I guess what you've got to ask, and I haven't worked out, is that a natural consequence of giving women the right to vote and the first wave feminist movement, or was it like a path-breaking disruption that set something that could have been good onto a profoundly evil path? And I don't know the answer.
That's actually a really good question, and that's actually perfect, because you're true, because you're right. Maybe these women who did fight for this were like amazing Christian women, and they didn't foresee the future of what, like, they probably assumed that Australia would always be Christian. There'll never be a shift in Christianity. Like, Christendom would always be a thing.
You couldn't imagine it.
They probably didn't think that there'd be like 70% atheists now. That probably wasn't even a thought in their head. So they probably safely assumed women should have the right to vote, because most women are Christian. They're wise women. They're good women. They're following Christ. They're following the Bible. They're learning the teachings. They probably thought that with all their whole hearts. And then Satan's probably sitting there in the background, I can poison the well here. I can put these satanic, paganistic, sexual deviants into Parliament. I can make them sexualize children with Kingsley from the 1940s. Like, it just set off a whole cascade of like evil somehow protruding. So I'm not saying it's women's fault. It's obviously always Satan's fault. It's always evil's fault that this happens. And obviously men, at the end of the day, to be fair, like, and I'll say this, it's actually, at the end of the day, it's men's responsibility more than anyone else. Like, we're supposed to be the pragmatic leaders of this world. We're the one, we shouldn't be silent, we should be loud, we should be like, no, enough's enough. And not be afraid to be called racist, not be afraid to be called misogynistic, not be afraid to be called all these names. It's time for us to step up and go, enough's enough. We tried this experiment for 60 years, it hasn't worked. It's time to actually save our nations. It's time to restore Christendom. Because if we don't, we're going to end up with South Africa, Rhodesia. We're going to end up, I'm not even joking, in 20 years' time, it might get, I wouldn't be shocked if there's like white genocide happening throughout these like these nations. I wouldn't be surprised in the UK that there's these sleeper cell terrorist organisations that hold machine guns in these mosques, and that one day we'll just come out and start killing all these white Christians or white people in England. I wouldn't be shocked.
Well,
I see it in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, Islam says slay the idolaters. You know, there's a clear call to violence.
Well, I saw it in Constantinople. I saw it my own. My own grandpa was
Western civilization is at stake. We agree with that. We agree that men and women need to step up to fight to save it. And I agree that men have a particular role in saving civilization. Men need to be strong.
They can't be. They need to stop being pussies.
I agree with that. Now, George, I think we need to wrap up.
We're going to wrap up. Okay. Yeah.
Do you reckon anyone's going to stick for the whole 2 hours?
100%. Yeah. I think this chat's like people will wait for this chat. I think we just had the chat that most people wanted to have. But yes, look, what time is it now?
It's 2:30 and 12:30. No, 2:30. 12:30, and I can see and I can see my husband. He's calling me, but it's all good. We can.
Look, I think. Look, there's obviously we need. I think it's unique that we've had this conversation, because most people haven't had this conversation yet, and I'm
interested for the comments.
Well, I gotta think about what you said a lot more, because it's very tough. Because it doesn't feel nice talking about.
I think we agree on the diagnosis of the problems, about what caused it. I'm not sure that we agree. In fact, we don't agree. I
don't know. I don't think we both know.
We both don't know. But I'm still working this stuff out. But I also think that these conversations are fundamental to fixing it.
100%.
And so I hate that the left cancels conversations like this.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's a real possibility that some of the things we've talked about become a headline, which then creates a chilling fear for people of speaking about these topics.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I love that you do go down these rabbit warrens and have these thought experiments. I think it's important. It's how we get to the truth, it's through talking, debating.
And this is another thing before I let you go, because obviously I want to hold you here hostage, but... Jay, look, where is she? I think one thing we've lost in society is the ability to have conversations without actually having to fundamentally believe in them. Like, you should be able to say things that you, like, I should be able to say things, you should be able to say things that we might not agree with in our heart of hearts, but we can say it loud, we can debate about them, we can have interesting conversations, let our audience learn off these conversations, you learn off it, I learn off it. Like, you've taught me things I didn't think about till today. I'm sure there's things that maybe I've said that hopefully you haven't thought of, maybe you're thinking about it now. And that's part of what made society and our nation so powerful, is because we weren't afraid to have serious chats. Does that mean that I fundamentally agree with everything I've said today? No. But what I do agree with is I should be able to say these things, and we should be able to engage in this conversation, and that's what Charlie Kirk did so well. Yeah. Charlie Kirk was able to engage with the left so powerfully and build a bridge between the left and the right, because I fundamentally think left and right don't exist. Like, they have to exist for it to make sense. And I'm saying this because the reality is there are things that are cosmic laws in this universe that will never change. But there are things in human nature that do change over time. And it might take 100 years, it might take 1,000 years, it might take 10,000 years, but there are changes in human nature, right? And that's where the left come in as progressives to go, hey, there has been a change. Conservatives, you need to see there has been a change. Let's change the way we do things to match that. But the problem is the left have gone so far. The left are acting like we're 1,000 years advanced when we're not there yet. So that's where the left need to calm down. And it's us as the right to come and go, hey, calm down the left. It's fantastic that you have this wild imagination and you think so highly of humanity, but we're not there yet. Let's just calm down. We'll get there maybe one day.
Well, I also feel that I actually would say their vision is fundamentally flawed. It's dystopic. Like,
there's definitely aspects that are like out of this, like in a different...
I think that...
different universe maybe, but not this one.
Yeah.
You know, so... Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much, Joanna. Is there anything? Is there anything you would like to share with the audience before I say goodbye?
No, all good. Thanks so much, George, and I really appreciate your time. Anyone that's been interested in the abortion-related information that I've talked about and those procedures that I spoke about, there's a website called abortionprocedures.com. That's not my website, but it's former abortionists narrating the procedures that they performed thousands of times prior to changing their mind on abortion. Yeah. And I think that website, abortionprocedures.com, is one that everybody should have a look at before identifying as pro-choice.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more of it, I'm sure I'll get Joanna back on. She's probably the best at these type of conversations, to be honest, because she knows how to dance the conversation and she also knows how to challenge them perfectly. So it allows a space where we can all learn and grow together. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again, Joanna.
Hey, I did have a thought though. Next time we should bring James, and then we could get into a big fight.
Yeah.
I think we need to spice it up. This was way too civil.
Yeah. No, but this is good. I think that's kind of like where my audience wants to be, because like the screen matches are fun, they're entertaining to watch, but like I think these deep philosophical, like, I feel like we're like two professors. Yeah. I'm not a professor.
No, to be honest, to be fair, James would be capable. He doesn't only fight.
We don't know. No. We'll find out next week.
Yeah, we will. He would love to. He would love to do this.
Conversation.
Yeah, of course he can.
The wife is here protecting him, which is honourable. I love it. It's very cute.
No, he definitely can. Just for the record, the beef with Sam Bamford. I love Sam, but I would say that, and he's coming home to next week, so I've got to be careful what I say, but I would say that, it just escalated all of a sudden, but we actually, I think all of us are capable of civility.
Yeah, hopefully, guys. I'm joking, they definitely are. Well, anyways, thank you for today again, and
thanks, George.
See you next week, guys. Thank you.